All right, so today is June 2nd, 2018, and today we're going to go over the 2018 governor elections and see where they stand as of today. So, typically, governor elections do favor Republicans, and that's likely what we're going to see in this map. Typically, Republicans do a lot better at statewide and local elections just based on the fact that their policies typically work in a much smaller community and don't really resonate on a national level. But when it comes to typical Democratic or Republican states, they are more lenient towards Republicans regardless of how they voted in a presidential election. For example, the state of Maryland, my home state, has an incumbent Republican governor, yet was one of the most Democratic states in 2016. So, pretty interesting. He was the first elected in 2014 under President Barack Obama, so it just goes to show how pretty much anything can happen. And he has an approval rating nearing 70%, so his election shouldn't be too hard to win yet again, even in a blue wave year. So, we're going to do this format a little bit differently. We're going to go through it from the 7 p.m. poll closings up into the 1 a.m., meaning I'm going to start off with states like Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia. Neither of those states, my bad, have any elections up in the governor elections, but I'm just going to go through it how they would close on in a regular election day. So we start off with 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans, so an even playing field. The majority really is biased towards Republicans because they typically win more states nationwide, but we're going to see how this turns out. So the state of Georgia closes at 7 o'clock. That one's going to be a little bit more contested with the new nominee on the Democratic side, Stacey Abrams. She definitely has a little bit more of a shot, but it's not safe for any particular candidate. Yes, I think it would be leaning in the favor of the GOP with a mildly popular GOP governor. It is possible that Georgia could flip and have the first African-American female governor, but it's also not so likely coming from a state like Georgia. I mean, Georgia did definitely get a little bit more close in 2016, and that was mainly because of a little bit more minority turnout and then a little bit less Republican turnout. Donald Trump was not really liked in the state of Georgia. He isn't really liked in the state of Georgia, and changing demographics all played towards the Democrats' favor. It was the perfect storm for the Democrats in the state of Georgia, but it wasn't necessarily the same case across the Rust Belt. Georgia and Arizona are 2 states that had Republicans that are Mitt Romney, John McCain type Republicans, and they weren't the same ones that supported the president. Yes, the Republican primary did go to Donald Trump in both of these states, but it wasn't by a majority. It was by a plurality, and that's not the way that people should be looking for a unified Democratic or Republican Party when a candidate wins by a plurality. But enough talking about a particular state. I think Georgia will ultimately end up in the Republican column. I'm not going to do it in the shaded region. It's just going to be just going to be safe for either state, for either party. But Vermont, that one I also see as safe for the GOP. It doesn't need as much talking as the state of Georgia because there is a more popular governor in the state of Vermont. And Vermont is one of those few swing states when it comes to governor elections where they are solid for one party during the presidential elections. But when it comes to governor races, they want a little bit different of what they see on a national level. And whether or not that be a Republican governor or a Democratic governor, typically these states are liberal Republican states, not in the majority, but they do have liberal Republicans, meaning they'll vote for Democrats on a presidential ticket, but they won't vote for them on a governor election. And a number of these Democrats are also a little bit more moderate leaning, meaning they'll be more likely to vote for a moderate and more liberal Republican, such as Phil Scott, who's the incumbent governor from the state of Vermont. But 9 Republicans, 7 Democrats. We move into 7:30 with the only state of Ohio. So the state of Ohio, that one with a retiring, popular incumbent Republican governor. I did see this one getting close at some point, but right now it's still going to remain in the Republican column. It's not enough to overturn it and go to the Democrats, and that leaves the Republicans with 10 seats, and again, the Democrats remain at 7. And then 8 p.m. rolls around, and all of these states, Tennessee, Alabama, safe states. I never filled in South Carolina, but that one is safe for the GOP. A number of these southern states, again, typically do better for Republicans. Already Republican states, don't expect them to flip. And Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina probably staying with the Republicans. But then we move on to the Northeast, and where you might see more Republican turnout and not as many Republican governors, we see a lot of them. So my home state of Maryland, I think that one's going to stay with the GOP. It is possible for a Democratic victory, but it's not likely. But up in Massachusetts, it's safe for the GOP. Massachusetts is probably going to go more Republican than my home state of Maryland, even though Maryland isn't as Democratic as Massachusetts. So Massachusetts definitely these 2 states have the 2 most popular governors in the United States, and they're both Republicans from extremely liberal and Democratic states, which is pretty interesting. But Massachusetts is much more safe than the state of Maryland. And then we go over to Rhode Island. That one I see narrowly going in the Democratic column, but its neighboring state of Connecticut I see going to the Republican column, with an increasingly dropping approval rating of the incumbent governor. Yes, he's not running again, but I don't think it'll be enough. I think so many people have been turned off about voting for Democrats that it's going to hurt them a little bit. Before, Connecticut could have rebounded, but now it's getting down to a 3 to 4 point lead on a generic ballot nationwide. Democrats aren't doing as well. Trump's approval rating is going up, and this blue wave could turn out to be dissipating, and we could see a couple red waves in that supposed blue tsunami the media has been talking about for a long time. And we're not going to see some epic mass takeover in the governor, Senate, and House elections. The governor elections are the least likely scenario for the Democrats to retake a majority in anything. The House is probably the most likely, and the Senate being actually, I think the Senate and House are pretty equal for the Democrats, but we only have 8 Democrats and 16 Republicans, and we're filling in safe Democratic states for Republicans. Once we get over to the Midwest, the majority will spike up for Republicans. When we're going over to the state of Maine, that one is a pure toss-up. I see it actually flipping to the Democratic column, just based off its past history as a state. I think Maine could narrowly go to the Democrats, and over in New Hampshire, I think that one could narrowly stay in the GOP column. Yes, they do have a popular GOP governor, but I think New Hampshire is going to be one of those first places where people are turning away from the president. It should be in states like Vermont and Massachusetts, but these people already hate the president. Up in New Hampshire, this is a swing state, meaning the president is definitely going to have a little bit more of an influence, especially after calling New Hampshire what he did. It's not going to be good for him or any GOP candidate, but again, they're up every 2 years. I think that New Hampshire will narrowly hold on to this governor, but I think in 2020, he's out. 9 Democrats, 17 Republicans. So we're going to lead into another state. Pennsylvania, I see that one going to the Democrats. The current Democratic governor is leading by double digits against the Republican nominee, so I don't expect Pennsylvania to be flipping anytime soon for the Republicans, but 10 Democrats, 17 Republicans. So now we're leading over into, actually, I don't think we filled in Illinois. Yeah, we didn't fill in Illinois, obviously. Illinois, that one is pretty close. We see Democratic tendencies in the state of Illinois. I narrowly see it going to the Democratic nominee, but it's not safe for either candidate. Clearly, with a Republican incumbent, they're in the advantage, but Illinois, just based off its history, just based off the approval ratings, I think Illinois could narrowly go to the Democrats. And then we move over to 8:30. So Arkansas easily goes to the Republicans. That's not contested. And then we move on to 9 p.m., and this is where the Republicans clearly get nearing a majority. So Oklahoma goes to the Republicans. Kansas will come back to. Nebraska goes to the Republicans. South Dakota goes to the Republicans. Wyoming goes to the Republicans, and so does the state of Texas. And Arizona goes as well. And that puts them at 24 seats with 11 Democrats. We're not going to seem, it's not going to seem like Democrats are doing too well at this point. And 24 Republicans, they are 2 away from retaining their majority, but the fact that there are 24 and there are still a number of states out, it's just crazy. There are 15 states I've yet to fill in, and they only need 2 of them, so that's pretty substantial. But the reason why I didn't fill in Kansas was because there was an unpopular incumbent governor. He just resigned recently, but Kansas, the Democratic candidates have said that they're going to stay in the race. The independent candidate who was contesting the 2014 Senate race, who was leading in every poll but then lost the general election, he's running. So if he doesn't take away votes from the Democrats, will take away votes from him. The only way that he could possibly win is if the Democrats actually choose not to run their candidate and throw their support to him, which is not likely to happen. So I'm leaving that one in the GOP column, and now they are 1 away from retaining their majority. So we're going to go over to Colorado. That one I think we'll see a little silver lining for the Democrats. Colorado, New Mexico, typical Democratic states, probably staying with them. New York, a hotly contested Democratic, 2 Democratic candidates, but not hotly contested, but mildly contested. New York I still see remaining in the Democratic column, putting them at 14 seats, the Republicans 25. So now we're going to start filling in the remainder of the states. So Minnesota, I see that one remaining in the Democratic column very narrowly. Wisconsin, I see that one going to Scott Walker. Before, there was a possibility for a Democratic pickup, but I'm going to leave Wisconsin in the Republican column. Michigan, Michigan. That one I want to come back to at the end, nearing the end. And Florida, that one I think could early go to the Democrats. That's where we're probably going to see a little bit more of a swing state tendency going to the opposing party in a Democratic wave year, because Florida does have a mildly popular 55% approval rating for Governor Rick Scott, but he is running for the Senate. And again, there's no power of the incumbency, and this is in a state that overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. It was less than 3%, so we can't really expect Florida to be safe for either party. But Florida, again, after all the things that happened in the state of Florida with a new wave of immigrants that are definitely probably going to vote, I think Florida could narrowly go to the Democrats, but again, that one could go either way. And then we're going to move on to 10 p.m. Iowa remains in the Democratic column, and now we are at 27 Republicans to Democrats 16. And Nevada, that one I see narrowly going to the Democrats, only because the Democrat has a little bit more energy on their side. Again, a hotly contested swing state. Nevada could narrowly go to the Democrats, but that only puts them at 17 seats. The Republicans are still at 27. And then we're going to move on to 11 p.m. So Hawaii obviously goes to the Democrats. The current Lieutenant Governor, Gavin Newsom, is going to win the California governor election. Oregon goes to the Democrats for obvious reasons. But Idaho, that one, of course, remains in the Republican column. And then we move on to the 1 a.m. poll closings. If the former senator, the Democrat, if he chooses to run, this race could get a little bit contested, because he would be going against the incumbent governor in a primary, meaning the governor won't run as an independent, because the parties have been unified and they will have one primary. If he chooses to run, I think he would win the election, but as of right now, I'm going to leave this one in the Republican column very narrowly, putting the Republicans at 29 governorships to the Democrats 20. So clearly the Democrats have gained a few seats, but again, it's not amazing. But Michigan is the final state. I think that one narrowly goes to the Democrats. I see a pretty good Democratic primary coming up soon, and I think it's going to be great for the Democrats. I think Michigan could narrowly go to the Democratic Party just based off the unpopularity of the incumbent and the national news media paying attention to the state of Michigan and paying attention to it in 2015, 2016, bringing attention to things that the governor was doing, and that's going to hurt his approval rating if it hasn't already. And we'll just compare the map. So 16 Democrats leading into the 2018 midterms. They finish off with 21, so you can see a little bit more blue, and you also see a little bit more red when it comes to the Northeast and it comes to a state like Alaska. But overall, the final map leaves off with 21 Democrats to 29 Republicans. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.